how long have you been in the photography industry? I know this
Whoa.
is a running joke with me having been
Well,
in
it is.
so many years, but how about yourself? Roughly,
How many years do you say now, Cam?
it's over 30.
Are we looking at 40 now?
Do you know, it's probably not far off. I always just say I've been in the industry for about 30 years, but it's probably, yeah, I mean, it's getting there. It's getting
I
there.
remember when I was first starting, and it was me and a colleague were starting up as together, and we like, okay, so we both worked for Venture for a few years, and we were like, okay, well, we need to put how many years. So collectively, we had about 15 years of experience, but each of us had half of that basically. But I thought about it the other day, you know, my first wedding was in 2003. So I am like 20 years of experience, just me now. Man, I'm getting old.
It's surprising how quickly that time goes, but carving out a career in, I was going to say in the photography industry, in any of the arts industries is supposed to be the hardest, because a lot of people want to go independent. You know, that's what they want to do. Now, we talk a lot about how do you get into photography? How can you make a successful business? What do you do to go into the photography business and still be there 2 years later, 5 years later, 20 years later? Because you remember a few episodes ago, we said, was it 80% or 90% of photography businesses that start up fail in the first, what was it?
Something like that. I can't remember the stats exactly.
3 years or year or something like that. But it was staggering, really. But, and if you go online, you hear a lot about, you know, I suppose tutorials, shall we say, of how to run a business, how to be a successful photographer. This is what you should be doing, and very much about that. However, how do you quit photography, Mark? Okay.
Well, it's knowing when to quit. I think, I mean, this basically came up because I read an article on f-stoppers. I mean, we're always reading articles, aren't we? Because this is the sort of industry we're in, and interesting articles to read. I think I read this when I went to Berlin to do some photography, as you know, Cam, and I think I was reading this in the airport. And you know, it's one of those things about, it's when is it time? Is it time for you to quit photography? Signs to look out for, you know, is this not going anywhere? And it's not just about your business, but they were talking about personally as well, because photography is very much a sacrifice in a lot of ways, I find. You know, I mean, this is, you know, this will be coming out a few days after we're recording. We're currently recording today is Bank Holiday Monday. I've shot 2 weddings over the bank holiday. There has been no bank holiday for me really this weekend. But that's the way it goes for the type of photography that me and you, Cam, are involved with. And that does put, you know, that's a burden on a lot of things. You know, I am married, I don't have any children, but you know, if you are away most bank holidays and you have children and all that kind of stuff, there is that burden, you know. And that's something that I guess you have to know. It's also something that your partner has to know, and it also, there has to be a way of, you know, like I said, I don't have children, so I don't know, but if you are away on certain things, you have to make that time up with your children, I guess. I mean, Cam, you probably have more experience in that area than I do, especially when you were starting out with you know, with Jordan, of course.
Yeah. The thing is that you never know these things until years later, when you sort of look back and think, oh yeah, that's the situation I was in.
Hindsight's wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah. I would never go back and change what I've done. Okay. I've loved it all. Okay. It's difficult to say I've loved every minute, because the thing is you have your pressure running your own business. It's a constant worry. Okay. Yeah. It's bloody hard work. Okay. We know that. We work long hours, you know.
And we've said that multiple times as well, to be fair.
And the weddings, they take up a lot of time. And then you've got your commercial clients who then have different deadlines and different type of pressure on that. You've got that. You know, we're now involved in a lot in graduation photography on a big scale. Now that also, you know, it takes a lot of planning as well. I mean, each event we do, it takes months of planning to get to the point of the actual shoot. And then you've got post shoot. Now, all of this takes up a lot of your time. And if you're looking for a work-life balance, and then in the first place, maybe photography is not the industry to go into, because you can't work 9 to 5. You need to be on call pretty much all the time. And now, when you've done that for a few years, it becomes the norm. And yes, that is very difficult if you've got family and if you've got children, because I know for a fact that with my son, there was a lot of things that when he was growing up, I didn't get to go to, particularly at weekends. However, my wife was always there. Now, that meant that either she was there or we were both there, but it always meant that the job that I was actually doing at least allowed one of his parents to always be there. Okay.
But that was still a sacrifice for you, though, wasn't it?
It was. That's right. Yeah. And like any parent, you're trying to give the best to your children. And I was having to work those hours where I did miss out on things. But also at the same time, I was there for also a lot of things as well, because my job allowed me to do that. It allowed that flexibility. So I'm not going to say, oh, I missed out on everything. I didn't at all. I probably experienced a lot more than a lot of parents that probably work 9 to 5, because I was able to maybe go and see something at school that he had on in the mornings, or straight after school, and go and pick him up from school. And
it's the weekend thing, really, isn't it? It's the weekend thing.
It was a weekend thing. That's right. Yeah. Maybe missing out on things like swimming lessons, but then I would take him as well. I remember all of those things. So I would say that I did have a really good balance with it. But there were times when it was sort of, maybe I missed out on some family events, things like that. But now I've got to the point, having done it for so many years, that I've now can afford to, fortunately, maybe cut down on the amount of work that I'm doing all weekends. I can now pick and choose what weekends that I want to work on, you know, the amount of hours that I want to do. I can do that to a certain extent. And so, but to be able to have done that, I've put in the hard work over the years to have got to this point. For somebody who's coming into the industry, you're not really going to have the luxury of being able to do that. But I've been through that whole period, and I'm getting now to that point where I'm not talking about quitting here, but I'm now cutting down on the amount of sort of on the days and the hours maybe that I'm doing. I'm still doing lots of days and lots of hours, and I'm there for every client, and I will always meet deadlines, whatever it is. But I can now set my schedule a little bit more the way that I want to be able to do that.
But I guess you also have a team of people around you as well, which helps.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah. And you're a big part of that, Mark, you know, and that helps to do that. But I, as I said, I've moved my business to be able to actually do that.
Yeah.
But then as for other photographers, when do you come to that point of quitting? Because, when I say quitting, because...
Well, we're not talking about retiring here, are we? We're talking about, I mean, so this was something I just wanted to read out. So I am going to be reading this, guys. Okay. This is from the article that I saw on F-Stoppers, which I thought was particularly, because photography is quite a selfish endeavor, as far as, you know, it's like being a rock star, or in some respects, it's you have to be driven to be a success into it, no matter what level, whatever you think success is, whether it's you're the best fashion photographer in the world, or whether you're just a successful wedding photographer. For me, there's no difference. There is a success level there. And if you're aiming for that certain success level, there is goals, there's targets, and it's quite almost like a selfish drive to get there, right? But this is the thing that which really kind of why I wanted to talk about it, really. So this is the passage I want to read. So it starts with, speaking of burden, I want to highlight the importance of your art not being a burden to the people closest to you. I am fortunate enough to be relatively young and yet not have a partner or children. However, it is almost painful to see people burdening their whole families and taking from them to pursue a rather selfish purpose of achieving their individual goals. If photography directly burdens your family and relatives, especially financially, I suggest putting it off for a while. And I think that's quite a thing, isn't it? You know, because you have people, if you are making money from it, then that's one thing. But right at the beginning, if you're just starting out and after maybe 5 years, you're not making money from it, that's probably a time to think, well, maybe I need to think about something else. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, very true. And the thing is that you were talking about drive, and you do need that drive and that determination to do it. But yes, there comes a point, doesn't there, when you maybe think, oh, actually, is this working out, or is it not working out? And do I drive forward with this, or do I pull back? I think one of the things that people can do here in this situation is you don't always have to do everything yourself. I think a lot of people think, I want to set up my own business. And regardless of that, they're going to set up their own business. They try, and then it doesn't work out for the reasons that you've said, with that pressure and everything. Whereas the thing is you can still work in photography, but maybe go in a different direction, take your photography to a different direction, and still be involved in photography in some capacity.
Yeah.
And then you can then come back to where you want to, because there's a lot of different careers. You know, there's police photography, there's medical photography. Of course, Sarah, who was who was presenting with us, a guest presenter for a few weeks, as a photographer, who was a schools photographer and a graduation photographer, decided to take a full-time job in medical photography. And so she's gone into that direction. That's going to lead to whatever route that she decides to go down. And you know, so it's worth looking at all the different careers, because people forget that there are other jobs within photography. It's not all about being self-employed. It's not all about having your own business.
That is true.
It's not all about sort of, John Smith photography. There are so many different options out there, and those options are worth exploring.
I think it's very much worth just reflecting on the certain things, like I just said about burden on your close ones. I think there's another one which this article was saying, can you handle the pressure? So if you can't handle the pressure of wedding photography, there is that really intense bit, isn't there, in a wedding day for the photographer, which is directly after the ceremony, before they sit down to eat, where you've got to get all the group shots and you've got to get the romantics. That is the intense part, but for a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
And that is the bit you've got to be on it. You've got to be on it, and you've got to be directed. You've got to be bossy, basically, politely, but you still got to be bossy. You can't allow Uncle Jeff to go to the bar. No, Uncle Jeff, you got to stay here, because I'm going to need you in 5 minutes. So you need to stay right here, and you got to be firm but polite. But if you can't do that, that you can't do it. I don't think I could sit in a hideout trying to photograph a bird of paradise for 20 hours. I don't think I could stay there for that long. I just have to go and do something. I don't think I could do that. And some people wouldn't be able to do this
that's right.
part of wedding photography.
Yeah,
but it's about reflecting on yourself, isn't it? I guess
it is. And what you said about wedding photography is exactly right. And further to that, what if you've done that on one day and you've been under a lot of pressure, and it's a Friday? You've now got a wedding on a Saturday, and you've got a wedding on a Sunday as well. And it's bank holiday weekend, and you've got a wedding on the bank holiday weekend. That's 4 weddings in a row. Okay. We've been there. We've done that. Okay. And I'm not going to do that again, me personally, because I've done that so many times over the years. I've been there and I've done that. And that's hard, because, as I've always said, that when it comes to wedding photography, it doesn't matter how many weddings you're doing. Every single couple needs to feel that that's their wedding is the only wedding that you're shooting. Okay. It's the only one that you've got on your mind, and you have to be back again. And some weddings you're going to find easy, and some you're going to find difficult. So, and it's in those instances where you sort of think, actually, can I do this? Can I do this long term? Am I going to, and if I do, then I've got to make that commitment to do it. And I've got to get that work, and first of all, I've got to find the work. I've got to get the bookings, and I've got to do the work. And then you've got to do your editing, and you've got everything else. And before that, your next wedding comes, and then your next wedding comes after that. And suddenly it's mounting on you. You've had no time at weekends. You're editing in the evenings. Your time away from your partner, your time away from family events. So you've got to try and find a balance of how you can make that work and do all of that, because you will crush under that weight.
Yeah. And if you're starting out as well, I mean, we're talking a lot about wedding photography here because that's what we know quite a lot of. I mean, we do other stuff as well, but wedding photography, I think, is the thing we know very well. Family photography as well. Family photography, right?
Yeah.
You know, you've got to work in the hours when people aren't working. So, you know, I work until 8, maybe 9 o'clock in an evening during the week. Because that's when people aren't working. So that's when they come in. And it's difficult if you have a 2-year-old in at 6 o'clock in the evening. It's difficult. You'd rather that 2-year-old came in the morning when they're you know, in a better mood. And again, Saturdays and Sundays, it's always been, you know, if bank holidays, that's when people are off. That's when people come in and have their family photography session. So it's exactly the same sort of thing. But also, you know, just going back to maybe fashion and other types of photography, you know, because it's such a sought after photography genre to be involved in, you know, again, this article, it does say, you know, photography is fantastic, but when you're a beginner, you know, it is an industry that treats beginners not very well. You know, it's notorious for treating beginners like garbage, is what this report says. And
I've been there.
And I've been there. Yeah, we've all been there. And you know, it's like anything. Journalism, I guess, has a similar sort of thing. You know, if you are an intern and you're starting, you are making the teas. You're not, you know what I mean? But it's hard, and you do have to get through it. But if you feel in 3 years or 4 years you haven't made any progress, quitting is, you know, they always say about quitting is a bad word. It's not. Knowing that you cannot go further with something is better than making that decision and quitting and then doing something else, whatever it is far better than doing something that you're not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
Quitting is always given this negative thing. It's not quitting. It's making a decision for your life. It's making a decision that will affect your life in a positive way. And if that means quitting one thing and starting something else, that's not a problem. If you continually do that for the whole life, then maybe. But you've got to make these decisions, and then if you know something's working, you stick to it. And
that's right. Yeah,
and that could be different genres of photography, or that could be quitting photography itself. I've been there. I felt about quitting before. I don't know if that's something that you've ever considered, but you know,
yeah, I've had my ups and downs, and that's when work's maybe not coming in, or I'm concerned about the amount of work, and that's pressure. You know, when you're worried and about the work that's coming in, and then suddenly you find that you've got too much work and you can't cope, and you've got to get through it. Regardless, you have to get through it. So it does take a certain amount of it takes a huge amount of individual sort of strength, but you've also got to have that support from your partner as well. And if you don't have I was going to say, if you don't have a supportive partner, that's probably the wrong way to put it, because it's unfair on the partner.
Yeah.
If you can't have if you and your partner can't come to an agreement that this is not working out for the different reasons that it's affecting your relationship and your life as such, then you do have to, it is the right thing, as you said, you have to identify that and say, okay, look, maybe I need to change direction, because there are other things in life, you know, that I have to also prioritize as well. But in this day and age, we have to prioritize earnings. We have to, you know, money does, but you have to survive.
Money does talk. You know,
you hate saying that, and you say, well, your relationship is more important than anything else. Well, of course it is, but actually everything's just as important as everything else. Everything is there. Your family, you know, you need your work to support your family. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to do my work because I'm going to support my family. It goes hand in hand with the other.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
You know, and then sort of, you know, we talk about, you know, that how it affects your health and how it affects your family and enjoying. We've sort of touched on that as well. And then do you get to that point of making that business decision of, yes, okay, I'm going to call it a day. But where does that other pressure come from? We've spoken about the pressure where it comes from, where it comes from maybe family things and deadlines and the amount of work that you're actually doing. But then what about the pressure from that you get from other photographers? Now, what I mean by that is the internet. and where there is this constant comparison and competition of all photographers looking at all other photographers and seeing what everyone else is doing and looking at somebody else's Instagram page and thinking, wow, they're putting a lot of posts, they must be busy. You know, Mark, you know, say with weddings, I try to make a conscious effort that I'm definitely going to be doing an Instagram post from every single wedding that we do, just to say, hey, look, we're here, blah, 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 and all of that. I've not done it, I don't think, for the last 3 weddings. I forgot at the weekend's wedding to do it completely.
Because you're busy.
Right? You know, and then...
I haven't done any today. I'd shot a wedding today. I've done nothing.
Exactly, right? And it's too late. That moment's gone, but I've got to put other stuff up on. And then you see other photographers who are constantly posting, wow, they've got another wedding. They've got another... Oh, they're busy. God, they're doing another shoot. They're doing a shoot here. They're doing a shoot there. Well, they may or may not actually be really as busy as you think. And that, but needless to say, that puts you under pressure. Before, there was a pressure of ranking on page 1 of Google, wasn't there? Now, I think that pressure's changed because it's gone to social media. So that also puts, and I don't care what anyone says, social media puts on a huge amount of pressure on us as photographers, because there is a constant comparison with what others are doing. And if anyone says that's not right, that is definitely the case.
And I think it's also, you've got to be careful about yourself. Again, it's something else this article on F-Stoppers said. I'm just going to point out who it was. I just want to read out who it was. It was by Lilia Ovchar. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right, so apologize. But something else that they did say is about, you know, if you become that guy who's constantly criticizing other photographers' work, you know, if you're sort of like getting to that really snipey, there's a joke I've said it many times. I'm sorry if you've heard it before, but for all the new listeners, there is a joke that I heard, and it's how many photographers does it take to change a light bulb? And it's 3. It could be 3 or it could be 1 million, right? We'll go with 3. 1 to actually do it, the other 2 to say how they've done the same thing but better. And that is something that is just riddled throughout the photography industry. There's a lot of people who will say, look at your photo and criticize it. You know, oh, they would have done it like this and they would have done it like that. But would they? Because they weren't there in that moment. So you know, it's very difficult with that. I think we mentioned it with the pictures of the coronation, didn't we? That the photographer was getting some. I was like, well, no, he's there and you're not, so shut up, basically. But if you're becoming that guy, you're or lady or whatever, you're becoming that person, then that's probably another time. Because if you're spending too much time criticizing other people's work, then you're kind of neglecting your own work, in my opinion.
And Mark, I'm going to be honest. I'll put my hands up and say I've been guilty of that. I've done that, and I've done it without realizing it. I've done it without not wanting to. But you get caught up when you're looking at social media and you're looking at stuff, and then you start to think, well, why are these other companies or why are these other photographers ranking higher than I am? Say maybe on Google or something. What are they doing that I'm not doing, and I'm doing it all wrong, and something's not right, and everything. You know.
But that's being self-critical, though, and I don't think that's a bad thing. What I'm talking about is just going on the comments and saying, oh yeah, this picture's rubbish because of X, Y, and Z, or oh yeah, he's not that good, really. You know what I mean? I mean, I know ranking gets a lot of I mean, you speak to photographers about ranking, oh yeah, well, you know, he just turns up and presses the button, doesn't he? Blah 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 blah. But what you don't see is all the prep that ranking does. You know, he can't be that higher end photographer if he's rubbish. He just can't be. You know. So don't be that person, I guess, is what I would say, because actually concentrate on your own work. Yes, what you were saying, Cam, about how are they ahead of you on Google and stuff, that's marketing and analytics and all that kind of stuff, which you do need to look at. But when it comes to the work, you know, yeah, if you don't like the picture, fine. But, you know, other people like it. And there's a reason why a photographer is successful, because he or she is good. So concentrate on your own work and stop being the criticism guy. And if you can't stop doing that, that's another time to quit, I guess.
Yeah, but you see that, but that's what it does. That's what social media does. That it adds that extra pressure on, doesn't it? And you said about marketing. You know, we need to be experts in marketing. We need to be experts in accounts. We need to be experts in so many different things. We you know, we have to put ourselves out there. So when is the time to quit? Well, we're all going to have. There's no answer to that. You know, no definitive answer. but the thing is, we're all going to have our ups and downs, and we have to see when it really affects us as individuals, when it affects our families, when it affects our health. And then you have to stop and think, actually, maybe I don't need to quit, but I need to maybe change direction a little bit. And if you feel like that, as you said, it's identifying that, and it's nothing, it's not a failing.
No.
It's saying, okay, well, look, I still, I love photography, and maybe I'm going to do something else, but within the photography industry, and that will keep me within that industry, because it will introduce me to new people, something else, and then I'll jump back into my own work at some point in the future. Maybe I'll take a 9-to-5 job if I can find one, and that where I am shooting all day and I'm not getting involved in the things that are taking up my time. I'm not getting involved in social media. I'm not getting involved in accounts. I'm not getting involved in marketing. I am actually working as a photographer. And at the end of the day, I finish, but all of the actual headache of running a business is actually down to someone else. So
yeah, just don't start a podcast. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. I'll talk about putting yourselves under pressure.
Yeah.
It's been a really good topic to chat this, Mark, because as I said, all really we hear about constantly is so you want to work for yourself, or you want to be a photographer, you need to do this, then do this and do this and do this, but they don't. But actually, this is really refreshing, because no one actually says to you, actually, are you okay? And when is the time to pull out, and when is the time to do this, and when should I think about quitting? But all things that are always good to discuss, though. So
no, absolutely. I think the main thing is there's only a certain amount of space for certain type of people, certain amount of people in different jobs. I mean, think about footballers. The amount of footballers that actually make it to the Premier League, or never mind national teams, but the amount of players that just never make it is just ridiculous. And but you could be a coach, you could be a manager, you could be a pundit, you could be, doesn't mean you have to leave that area completely. So it's not, like we're saying, it's not a failure. If you feel like X isn't working, try Y, and work it out, and have that positive reflection on yourself.